Bulletin.
Tuned on Y254 News, and tonight it's all about teens and suicide. We try to understand this phenomenon of how do we make sure that young people, even the elderly, don't seek for suicide as an option. And with me tonight, I'm going to be joined by, I have Charlene, who is a psychologist. We have Lindsay and Vivian. And my first question would be, why do people go to suicide as an option? Let's start with you, Lindsay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Patricia, for having me on the show. So some of the reasons why teens, we're talking about teens,
Yes.
Actually commit suicide is because first could be depression. You know, when you're depressed, you have these suicidal thoughts and you want to end your life so that, because you think that ending your life will actually solve something, or you're going to, you're going to be, it's like punishing yourself also. Two could be of drug abuse and alcoholism, like you just articulated. You find that when you take alcohol or you're addicted to drugs, you act impulsively. And so when you act impulsively, you're unable to think, and you don't even focus on the consequences. So you find that a teen, if you've ever had suicidal thoughts before, then this is the time that you will take them into action. Yes. Also, you find that sometimes even relationships, if, for example, you break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, these things will give you, there's a trauma that comes with it, that you're unable to deal with it. You can end your life because of the pressure that you will face ahead there. Yeah. And also we have things like pressure due to work, pressure due to school and exams. You find that your parents are really on your case. They want you to perform well, and if you feel that you're not going to match up the mark, you can actually kill yourself.
Okay.
Yes.
For you, Vivian, being a young person and you interact with very many young people, how do your friends probably, or how do you deal with when you get to a state whereby you're so stressed, or you feel that you have a lot of pressure to really achieve something or to do something, but you feel you don't have the capabilities to do so?
Most of the time, I talk to someone. I find an adult person to consult and to tell this person I'm really stressed, and I'm at a point where I feel like I've hit rock bottom. Because most of us think of suicide because of the pressure to level up. You feel like your friends are living this kind of life, and maybe you're not at that place yet, and your parents are really on your back. You have to do this, you have to do that. So most of the time, it's good to talk to someone and explain what your situation is and try to find a way out of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Charlene, what are the risk factors of suicide? As a psychologist, we know that you have facts, you have information about all these things and how to curb it and how we can deal with it. What are the risk factors of suicide?
Okay, first, before we even get into suicide, you have to understand the adolescent mind or understand the teenager. At a point where you are qualified, or you've gotten to a stage where we can call you a teenager, then a few things are happening. First is something we call identity formation. You're starting to find out or to figure out who you are. You're transitioning between childhood and adulthood. Okay? You're also starting to get to a point where social relationships are also very, very important. So there's that need to feel accepted, to understand what's happening. Aside from that, then there's also pressure to succeed in life, pressure to do well in school, pressure to have friends, to meet a social norm, rather. Aside from that as well, you're also going through something we call sexual identity. You're starting to find out that you're either attracted to same sex, attracted to opposite sex. You're trying to figure out your sexuality. And in most cases, once you start to feel, it can be a very difficult process if you don't have somebody to guide you, if you don't have someone to talk to. And when you start to feel like you can't handle the transitions that you're going through by yourself, then you start to feel hopeless. You start to feel helpless. You're constantly worried. You're confused. So what are you supposed to do with yourself? You know, these are some of the things that can lead someone into suicide. Okay? So when you try to reach out to someone and, for example, you don't get the response that you wanted to get, then it makes you start to pull away, to isolate yourself. So when you're kept alone, or when you pull yourself away and you're alone with your thoughts, you're very confused, you feel like most people don't understand you, you're not understanding the world at that particular point because you know, when you're transitioning into an adult, there are some things that you want to do, but you also feel like you're still restricted because there are norms, there are rules that you have to follow.
Okay.
But people are telling you now you're an adult, you're a teenager, you have to start behaving like an adult. But at the same time, you also kind of have to behave like a child and follow rules, you know. So when that starts to happen, you feel more alone. And the more you question life and the more you question your existence there, the more you feel confused, the more you feel alone. So now thoughts of suicide are going to come in. And when you start to ask yourself the question, why am I here? If you can't answer that, then it paves a way, or it's rather justification as to why you shouldn't be here in the first place. So you start thinking, you know what, suicide is a good option for me. Why? After all, I don't know my purpose here. I don't know why I should be here. No, I can't reach out to anybody. Nobody understands me. I don't understand what's happening to me. So why should I be here?
Okay.
Yeah. And
so what signs, what do we look for to maybe identify and get to know that my friend might be thinking of this thing? What do I look out for, or what do someone out there look out for in a friend? Charlene, Lindsay.
Okay, so actually this is a very dear topic because I lost a cousin last year. He committed suicide, and that is what made me to go deeper in this and study a lot. So one of the signs is, for example, there's something, the mental behavior. You see that this person keeps saying that, you know, I can't do this, I'm hopeless, you know. Then we also have verbal. You'll find that someone who actually wants to commit suicide will keep saying, I'd rather be dead, I wish I wasn't born, you know, one day you'll miss me. You know, this person can even extend these messages to Facebook, social media. You also find that also the socialness of this person decreases. You find that this person prefers to be in isolation. So you see these behavioral changes. And also, when you look deeply, like as the case of my cousin, he started involving himself in very reckless behaviors. For example, having sex with just anybody, you know, drinking too much, because this is someone who has lost faith in this world and just wants to pass on. And then now the funny part is, sometimes you just don't have to be low. Sometimes you find that if this person has had suicidal thoughts before, and maybe you had seen these signs, because that was the case with my cousin, we had seen these signs of him isolating himself, but all of a sudden we started seeing this person very comfortable. Like, you know, I'm okay. But sometimes these people are okay because they've already accepted, you know what, I'm going to kill myself. So also these are some of the signs you need to look for. So if you've noticed that someone drastically has changed, that this person was behaving in a very funny way, isolating himself, you know, feeling just, you know, involving himself in very bad conduct, and then all of a sudden he's very okay, then you need to start taking action.
Okay. So Vivian, we know that we are taught about sex in school. Our parents have these conversations with us. Do you think that suicide is a conversation that should now start happening in our families?
Yes, of course. I think parents need to indulge their children a lot, because most of the times you'll find that parents don't listen to their kids. Maybe your child has something to say, something is bothering them. When they come to talk to you, you're like, be a grown-up, be a man, what's wrong with you? So these kinds of things need to be taken into consideration. When you notice the kind of behaviors she's talked about in your child, you need to start becoming your child's friend and talk to them. Try to find out what the problem is and what the source of the problem is, and how you can help them.
Okay. How do parents now get to be part of their children's lives by wanting to know how they're faring on, probably wanting to know if one has been in a relationship, things didn't work out well? How do they now get into that conversation?
The first thing is communication. Try to communicate with your child as much as possible, and don't communicate and then when they tell you something, you're there judging them. Try to communicate from an understanding perspective, because remember, you as a parent, the age that you grew up in is very different from what your child is growing up in right now. So listen to them when they are speaking. Secondly is be observant. You know, when adolescents are thinking about suicide, like she'd mentioned, they go through drastic changes. And it's not always depression cases where someone is constantly sad and crying. With adolescents, you'll find the grades are starting to drop. This was an A student, all of a sudden they're getting Ds. You'll find they're constantly fighting with their friends, with their peers. They have no one to talk to. Their whole outlook, how they dress, how they groom themselves has started to change. They're highly irritable. Nothing seems to excite them anymore. And you have to understand, for adolescents, a lot of things that excite them.
Yeah.
Even music, movies, you know, new phones that come out. So when you find that you have an adolescent who's really not excited with the things that are happening in the world, then you have to start being very curious about what is happening. Irritability, I'll repeat again, is a very, very key thing, especially with adolescents. So as a parent, pick out these things and then listen when your child is speaking, because most of the time, before anybody attempts suicide, they think about it. There are stages that are there in suicide. First, there's the thought of suicide. Secondly, there's the method, and then there's action.
Okay.
So when they start talking, they probably haven't really figured out what the method is yet. That's your window. You don't have to directly come to them and say, you know what, you've been talking about death a lot, are you trying to kill yourself? No. You come in as a parent and you say, okay, so far you seem to have been, you seem to be very, very curious about death. You seem to be talking about it a lot. May I ask what has sparked this interest? You see, the way you choose to talk to your child also determines how they're going to respond. So when you notice that things like that are happening, another indicator would be adolescents like to scribble, they like to write. So when they're writing poems about loss and death, that's also another indicator. So seek out a counselor, a therapist, a school counselor rather, you know, somebody who can talk to this adolescent and help them work out whatever is stressing them.
Okay.
Because you see, for them to get to a suicide point, they're really feeling like everything that's happening in the world, they're not in control. So they don't need to be there, which means they're not able to process their day-to-day life. So they need someone to help, and as a parent, you can do that. But sometimes you need to engage, actually most times you need to engage a professional, somebody who knows how to handle such a situation.
Okay. For you, Lindsay, having lost her family member because of suicide, how was it for your family? What measures did you take to go through during the grieving stage and deal with the anger, deal with the pain that comes with it? What did you do as a family?
Okay, first of all, when you lose someone through suicide, what goes round is the fact that you always ask yourself, would we have done something to solve this, or did we ever see the signs coming? And I remember when we were having the memorial just the other day, every parent took an initiative to actually, you see, you don't have to wait for your son or daughter to come to you and tell you the problem. You can as well reach out, because you know, people are very different. Sometimes you don't have to come and tell me. I can come and tell you, and, you know, and I speak my mind and I tell you, you know what, going through these things is normal. Mom and dad go through the same thing, but you know what, problems are just temporarily. So if you're able to just deal with this, and in case of anything, just know we have you. We have your back. So these are some of the things, you know, we felt like it was actually a learning point even for the whole community, because parents actually took an initiative to understand their kids. And you see, when you notice something small, you're able to, you know, study your son, your daughter. When you see the grades dropping, you know, something as small as that, you're able to see what could be affecting my son or daughter. Yes.
Okay, Vivian, how do we now deal with when someone comes and tells you, I have been thinking about this thing, I think I've gone through this and I don't feel I can take it? How do we communicate to these people? 1 minute.
I think the first thing to do is don't judge the person. Try and be a friend to that person. Be friendly to them, understand them, and find out what the source of the problem is and how you can help them. Because most of the time, when people come to us with problems, we end up judging them. We're like, why do you want to kill yourself? You know, so just be their friend, be there for them and understand them and help them.
Okay, Shirley, now as we wind up, we now have talked about depression, we've talked about alcoholism being factors that can maybe make someone think of committing suicide. What now do we do as a society? What do we do as friends, as family members, to make sure that this thing does not keep on happening in our society?
The first thing is, let's have open communication channels between families. Let children, adolescents learn that they can freely express themselves, again, as Vivian said, without judgment. Don't judge them. Be open-minded, be concerned. Secondly, talk about it. You know, so far, people don't want to talk about suicide.
It's true.
Even when it happens in a particular family.
It's like a taboo.
Exactly. The family tends to withdraw themselves. And the society is like, hey, that one, the son killed himself, the daughter killed himself. And it makes that person feel ashamed because of something that happened. We need to recognize that there's so many emotions that need to be processed. And people process on different levels. Okay? So when it comes to talking about suicide, be open about it. Speak your mind and be supportive. Do not isolate yourself, do not pull back, because at that particular point when you're feeling most alone, that's when you need people around you the most. That's when you need support to help you.
Okay, thank you very much, guys, for sharing your thoughts on that. It is a topic that needs more conversation. It's a topic that needs more time, and we are going to look for time to make sure that we cover what we've not covered tonight. But what I would say is that communication is important. As parents, make sure that you have ways of talking to your children. Maybe sometimes look, what do they even post on their social media? Because I'm sure it all starts somewhere. So let's talk about suicide, because only through talking about it are we going to curb these things where people have to just we have to lose our loved ones in very, very bad ways. And now that is all we had for you tonight on Y254 News. Thank you for being with us. My name is Patricia Muriuki. Do have yourselves a very good night.